Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. Today, we're rewinding the tape and bringing you one of our most impactful conversations from the past. These are the episodes that started it all: foundational stories, powerful insights, and timeless lessons from families in business, experts in the field, and leaders who've shaped the way we think about legacy. Whether you're tuning in again or hearing it for the first time, there's always something to take away. So let's hit play on today's Legacy on Repeat. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you so much.
So today we want to really talk about how to set up the business for success. So we at Blue Roots work within this podcast is to really give information to family businesses and families and, trying to navigate that very complex world. And I'd like to talk a little bit about your work dealing with businesses and families and setting the business up for success or transition. And that transition can be to a family member, to the employees, or to a stranger, right? So regardless of what you're doing, you still need to have the business set up. What is a piece of advice you would give if you went into, if somebody just called you up and said, "Hi, I'm needing a little bit of help here. I'm a family and a business and I don't know what to do."
I'm always going to lead with a question, and it's just like, what are you looking to achieve? That's where I start. And then it's based on whatever they're saying is where I might dive in a little deeper. Oftentimes, I want to get it ready to sell. But I don't know what I need to do next or whatever. And it's like, well, who are you looking to sell it to? And then what is it they want? And it's making sure that values are aligned and business goals are aligned. And it really just, needs to start coming together as a meeting of the minds and making sure that, the vision that you have for your business, even after you're gone, is aligned with that next generation or whoever's taking it over. And this is why it's so important to sit down and talk about it and work it out.
So really it's time for them to sit and work on the business, not just in the business, right?
So much so. Yeah, you need to. And I would also recommend that they get away from the office space, go to a new location, because it's so wild how much that impacts your thinking by being in a different environment and being almost in an even playing field.
Yeah.
Because if it's your business and your place of work, there's a sense of ownership. And so the person that's coming in that might be interested, whether that's a child or someone else in the family or some other person, they might feel like they're on uneven footing compared to you. And that's why getting to a new location can be great.
Yeah. And I also think it impacts you as well, like as the founder or the business owner. I know that, for my years of going to Strategic Coach and a few other programs, that I learned to work on the business at least once a quarter. I learned to work on the business because it's so hard when you're the founder, you're Gen 1, you've done everything. It's hard to let go. And
it's another child.
It is. And going to a neutral location with your team is, it's a different perspective. You're coming at it from a different angle. I think that's super important. So going offsite, I think, is fabulous. We used to just borrow a client's boardroom. It didn't have to be anything, fancy.
No.
It's just get out of the office, because it's like staying home on vacation. You're still doing laundry, still doing groceries, right? Your mindset is at the home as it is in the business. Yeah. So, going off site, I think, is fabulous. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Vision. It's one of my key things is that you do have to have a vision. So what do you do? How do you tease out that vision when you're going in and people go, I don't know. My vision is just to pay the bills every month and to retire at some point.
Well, then I have a concern, because I'm like, if you don't know what your vision is, how is anyone else supposed to get on board?
Exactly.
So through my years of experience, I am a big fan of start with something bigger picture, longer term, whether that's 5, 10, 25 or whatever. Have that ultimate goal in mind. But then let's start bringing it back to reality. And so work your way backwards, whatever kind of segments that is. But quite often it ends up, that 3-year and that 1-year kind of game plan. So let's say you do a 10-year vision, you kind of see like, okay, well, I'm only gonna be around for the next 7, but I want this business to be around a lot longer. So 10 years from now, I'm completely out of the business and the person that's here is running it and we're doing X, Y, Z and whatever, right? Like there's still that vision even without you in the picture. But if you want to achieve that in 10 years, let's look at the next 3 years. What do you need to start putting in place now to be ready for your exit in 7 years?
So when you're talking about exit and working with entrepreneurs and business families, when you look at that vision, do you also talk about legacy? And, yes, your vision is maybe you're not in the business in 7 years, but are you still going to be an owner of the business? Are you transitioning? Is this a legacy? Is that part of that vision?
Yeah. Get specific in that vision to what capacity, how much time you want. Like, are you completely out of it that you want nothing to do with it? Or are you just out of it enough that maybe you're in a board-like figure where you pop in for an annual meeting or you like to see reports? But get specific in how involved or not involved you want to be, because that could also affect the relationship of the successor.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that, again, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I've been through this. I've transitioned a business to a coworker or an employee, to a stranger, and to my children. So I've done several, and now I've got another company. So I don't know who's left to transition to this one. But I think it's important because it's not an all or nothing, right? So your vision doesn't have to be for it to go to the family or to go to a stranger. And I think that having that ability to talk it through is key. And I know we talk about, communication and having your family understand that there is more than just one way to skin a cat. And what is that vision?
Yeah.
Where did that come from anyway? One way to skin a cat. It's a terrible saying.
It's not great.
It's a terrible saying. But having that communication talk to say, what is the family's vision? Mm-hmm. I mean, do they have a vision?
Yeah. Coming from my point of view, that my dad was an entrepreneur, he was an industry that was interesting to me. It wasn't something I was like super pumped by and wanted to get involved in. And so I think it is important that if you are a business owner and you are thinking, hey, I'd love for this to be a family thing, or like you kind of just like, oh, I have a family business.
Yeah, duh.
And discovering that, yeah. Right? It's important that the next generation wants it too, or they're equally motivated.
Right?
Yeah.
In some capacity.
Yeah. Because if they don't have that same vision for you, then they might not take it as far as you want. And then that can create the friction or, whatever. And so it's important, again, that's why having your vision laid out and having theirs laid out and making sure it aligns will help make it smooth.
Or somehow aligns. Because again, I think your first generation, when I started in business, I didn't start out to be an entrepreneur. I didn't start out to have a family business. So, I look at it in a different angle than, my son looks at the business, because he wasn't there at the very beginning. He's looking at an established business.
Yeah.
So his vision is different.
Yeah.
And, as you say, it's another baby, this business. It is because you started it from scratch. Mm-hmm. And, did you do it just to earn an income? Did you do it because you truly wanted it to be a family business? And I started it just from an income perspective, and then realized that, hey, I put a lot of work into this. I really don't want to see it just sort of disappear.
Yeah.
Right. So how can I continue it and be proud of it? So what is my legacy in that vision? And so one of the other things I think is important, and tell me how you deal with this, is you have the vision, which is great because you need to know where you're going. You need to have a bit of a roadmap where you'll never know. You just go around in circles.
Yep.
But, we hear a lot of vision, mission, values, right? So we have the vision and the mission and the values, I think, are very important. And I think we already have them. We just don't really put them on paper, right? Or talk about them with our family.
Yeah. You know what you want to represent, and you think that's what you represent until you actually sit down and be like, hey, so what do we represent?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So how do you start your process? If you said, what is your, values as a company? Because again, that has a bearing on how you treat your customers, how you grow your business. Is it on service? Is it on price? Is it on, you want to take over the universe? Like, what is it you want to do? So what's the first thing you would do if you're sitting down with a family business?
Well, I mean, I would check in with the owner, visionary, entrepreneur, whatever we want to call them, and say, do you have one? Because sometimes they will, or they're like, oh yeah, we mocked one up, decades ago. I'm like, okay, well, where is it now? See if it has it.
Do you even know what it is?
Well, and that's just it, right? Is like, how often have you gone into a company and they're like, okay, what are your core values? And everyone's like, crickets.
Yeah.
No one knows. They all feel like too ashamed to admit, like, I don't know, right? Because this is something that they should know. One, do they have it? Can they remember it? If they can't, then let's find something that's going to make it simple.
That's meaningful, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think like if it connects to something that means something to everyone in the organization, it's more likely to stick. And again, keep it simple. I find too often people think more is better. And I'm so not a fan of that. I'm like, keep it simple, keep it straightforward so it can be memorable.
And you really want to hire based on that, right? So, when we'll talk about this in future episodes, but there's communication, there's hiring the right people. But, some of the things right off the top is, their experience, which is box tick. Yes, you are, whatever it is you're hiring for. And then B, you like the personality. So that's kind of good.
Great.
But what are the other,
fit?
Yeah. Like, okay, so do you fit this? This is what you can ask examples of that, of your core values. And it's a fun exercise. We did it a few years ago, many years ago, actually. And we had them. We lived and breathed them every day, except they weren't written down.
Right. And that's good. And that's like a sign of a strong culture, whether it's defined or not. I think it's when you get into some of those organizations where like, well, I don't know. Like, I didn't think that was important. So just taking the time to acknowledge that like, this is a lens that we can filter who we hire, who we choose to have as clients, how we show up as an organization that's going to attract people to want to come work with us, whether that be as employees or as clients. Having that solidified in what you represent to the world is, I think, a really strong way to sell your business.
I think so too. And again, we're talking about smaller businesses here. We're not talking about, the TDs or CIBCs where, your core values are thrown into your face. This is what our core values are. We're talking about family businesses that, probably have under 100 employees and you're hiring and you're firing on that. I remember once a long time ago, we hired a gal from one of the banks. And our core values were HRSP. We were in the financial services, kind of goes with RSP, TFSAs, like all those acronyms. Yeah. So it was HRSP, helps first, relationships matters, progressive, and HRS, solutions focused, HRSP. And anyway, she had come from the bank and we said, well, our first thing is helps first. We're helping our coworker, we're helping whoever answers or calls in, we're helping clients, we're the mailman, whatever we're helps first.
Yep.
And they're like, why do you take all these calls? Like there's nothing in this call for you. Like, why do you help these people? I said, that's who we are. We built our business on helping. And after, not very long after, she goes, I totally get why you do that. Like, it's so nice. People call in and they're asking questions and you're helping. That feels so good. Right. And again, that's our culture. Yeah. And, we have hired, again, before we started using all the assessment tools, and it didn't fit in. Like, I remember one person we hired, it was all about the sale, all about the big business, didn't care about anything. It's like, well, you don't fit here because we're all about helping, providing a good solution. We're progressive. We're going to continue to grow and learn. So it can be. I think it's an important tool. so you do your mission, and your mission statement, of course, really comes out of your core values and your products and
it
services,
doesn't have to be
right?
fancy with like big words, and it's, just layman's terms is great because then everyone understands it.
Yeah. It's very simple. It's easy to understand, for sure. I know other ones, years back, there used to be like paragraphs of them, like, oh, that's not a mission statement.
No.
When we're talking about businesses and we're talking about getting organized, processes.
Mm-hmm.
When you're setting up your business for success, so you've got core values, you got your mission statement, what about processes, accountability and accountability charts, all that kind of stuff? What is that? Org charts, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
How important is that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, I think there's a few things in there. I mean, processes. I don't know if you're American or Canadian, it depends.
Tomato.
Yeah. Just having it documented. I mean, if you're building a business to pass on, sell, whatever, having those documented, it makes it so much easier for succession planning. Whether in a role, person's getting elevated, or maybe they're moving on to another opportunity, the next person coming in knows what's happening. But as an organization, you're able to continue functioning without missing a beat. So having processes built helps with that future planning.
And, and I've been accused of this, over the years. Remember, I've been doing this for a long time. It's like, if it's in your head, it's no good. No. Like, it's like recipes. If you don't tell me the recipe, you're going to hold an ingredient back, right? So it's never going to be the same. Well, I think it's the same thing in offices, right? Yeah. If you, and I remember having an employee years and years and years ago, before I learned all these tools, who really didn't want anybody else to know what she did, because she felt that was a way to secure her role.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I strongly disagree with that.
I know.
It to me, that just is, she's in it for herself versus the overall success of the company. That's my, and maybe that's a cynical point of view, but that's what it tells me, is that maybe that's not a right fit. And that's when I would, compare that individual to our core values, and if they align. You mentioned like accountability charts and making sure you've got the right people in the right seats. We'll talk about this in the Colby one podcast, but just making sure that their strengths work for the role, but what they value also aligns. Like, it's so important that they have the skill set, the mindset, and that they're able to take action the way you need to. So, yeah.
Well, and I think, when you're starting out in business and you're like, again, like me, you're just hiring somebody and they do everything, right?
You say yes to everything.
You just have to, you want someone who they're not necessarily great at everything. They can just do everything. Mm-hmm. And as you grow, then you have to start dividing and to really have your, job descriptions.
Yeah.
I have a company that's got 25 employees that doesn't have job descriptions. And I said, well, you're trying to start looking at a transition. Let's get job descriptions. Like, let's make sure, what people do. Or you need to hire. Mm-hmm. Well, what role do you need? Are you sure you need that role? Yeah. Let's look at the accountability chart. Let's divide everybody. And in a growing company or a little company, you have to really look at that on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
Because if you've got 25 or 30 people, you don't have a full-time HR. You don't have a full-time person accounts payable. You don't have a full-time person doing this or that. They're cross-referenced, right? They're doing a few things. Mm-hmm. And having documented processes make it very simple. Yep. But again, that comes back to your strengths and your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that I am not a process person. I do not write processes. I barely follow them. But having the right people in my team, mm-hmm. in the company who wrote them, and I could actually do it if I grab the binder that tells you how old we are, grab the binder, flip it open, and it's step by step on how to do things. Yeah. So it really is working in a team basis. Yeah. Right.
It does take everyone's involvement to be successful at it, because not one person can carry the team by being consistent at it. So there's a buy-in that needs to happen from everyone.
So we've got, how to prepare your business, which is a lot about processes, mm-hmm. doing your alignment in terms of your vision, your mission, your values, hiring the right people, using the assessment tools that we'll talk about at a later date, which are, Print and Colby, which we love because they are statistically proven and they don't change over time, and they're not about personalities. So, look for future, sign up to our podcast and you'll get the Brett and Colby's coming up. But what else would you recommend to sort of get your business prepared for success?
Have the conversation with the current team. Businesses go through evolutions. I mean, you probably went through a few of your own. You went through major growth spurts, and the business evolved, and how it operated needed to change. And, who got you here might not get you there. And I think it's important that as soon as you start thinking about next steps, is that maybe not everyone right away, because that can scare people, but some of those core leadership team, or whoever might be taking it over, it's like, start having that conversation and be transparent. I think too often we feel like, no, I have to hold this close to my chest. I can't share this information yet. And then all of a sudden it comes out of nowhere, and everyone feels a little blindsided. And sometimes people need time or a different way to absorb the information, or to wrap their head around what's coming. And then they can start thinking about, how can I contribute?
If they can, right?
Yeah.
One of the consistent stories I hear from clients is long-term employees, like the one I mentioned before, that just cannot conform. They just, it's time to sometimes just rip off the Band-Aid. I think there was a book, How I Built It, and for the life of me, I can't think of the author. And there was a story in there about 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And he had, I can't remember how many employees. And the philosophy of 1-800-GOT-JUNK is not garbage. It's that to help people clear out things that they need to get rid of. So it's not junk, or I should say it's not garbage. Might be junk to someone, but something great to somebody else. Yeah. So he had all these trucks, and anyway, it turned out that some of the employees on the trucks were treating it like junk, like garbage, not helping people clear out clutter and moving on. Because it takes a long time for people to sort of clear out their garage. People like to hold on to certain things.
Yes, there's sentimentality there.
Yeah. And so he ended up firing everybody and started from scratch because the culture just got kind of out of whack. His business dropped to just about nothing again, and he built it back up again with the right culture and the right vision and the right people in the right, seats.
Yeah.
And I was like flabbergasted when I read that. And I thought that is very brave, but I get it, because the vision, what the vision was not coming to fruition.
It's not aligned with
and when you get a bad apple, or you get wrong vision, or you get someone who doesn't follow your core values, then that can taint, the rest of them. So I admire him for ripping the Band-Aid off, getting rid of everybody and starting from scratch. And now look at them now. They're very successful all over the world, right? Yeah.
It definitely is a bold move.
It is. I was very impressed. I think it's How I Built This is the name of the book. And
is it Cameron Harold?
You know what? I can see the picture. I can see the front of the book. I cannot think of the name. Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. But I do have one last question. What is your takeaway today? What is your words of wisdom for the listeners? What is the one thing that you would recommend in preparing their business for success?
Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Good. All right. I like that. So don't be afraid to talk about it. Yeah. Open up the conversations and start talking about your vision. Well, great. Yeah. Thank you very much today for joining us, Brett.
Thanks so much, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.